All right. Well, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. It's 1 o'clock, and I hereby call this meeting of the Cambria Community Services Board of Directors to order. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? We have all members present, so we have a quorum. I wanted to, in my president's report spot, just give you a little bit of agenda adjustment information. And of course, if the members have any other ideas, fellow directors have any other ideas for changing the agenda, please let me know. But because our finance director is on a tight schedule today, and we want to, get to the finance related items early, I'd like to move the manager reports to after regular business. In other words, before the future agenda items, if that's okay with everyone. So that we'll get right to, after public comment, basically, and after the fire and sheriff's reports, we get right to the budget, which is 5A, and then we would go to consent agenda and regular business. If there's no problem with that, we'll do that. Good. Okay, great. Yeah. Oh, manager reports will go right after, actually, right before future agenda items, after regular business, because regular business has a financial item too. Zoom should be available. Yeah, Mr. McElhenney, you can explain. Yeah.
Yes, Miss Fritz will be available on Zoom.
Should be available on Zoom. Yes, just yeah. First, she'll be available for that as well. She'll be available. I think your microphone. Your mic, you're not mic'd up, so people can't hear you. Yeah, she'll be available for those items.
She will.
Exactly. Yeah. I also want to comment briefly, follow up on a little discussion we had, brief discussion we had in future agenda items at the last meeting about the reading of written comment. And on a little bit of further discussion with certain other board members, I think there's hopefully a rough consensus that a matter like this it should be a chair's prerogative as to how to deal with the reading of written comment. And in my view, if the board wishes to contest it, they can do so. But my view is that I believe that written comments should be put in the record, but not read aloud at the meeting. The next president may want to do it differently, and I don't want to tie that person's hands. And so I want to keep this as a prerogative of the chair. If that is in fact the view of the board, is fine. And we don't have to take a vote on it, obviously. But I think the issue should, I think, stay with the chair, for the foreseeable future. Again, if the board wants to do it as a future agenda item, they can agree to do so. But I think it's best left to that level of discretion. So that was my comment on that little discussion we had about reading. With that said, that's the conclusion of my report. Does anyone on the board want to make any adjustments to the agenda as in deleting or moving items more than we've already been moving them? Director Dean.
I just have a question. So are you moving all manager reports after 8A? Because I see Mr. Aguirre is here, and I don't know if he'll be back here for his facilities and resources report at the end of the meeting.
That is the plan, though. Mr. McElhenney, you might want to clarify what you would do on that.
Thank you, President Gray. I haven't connected with Mr. Aguirre. Do you have more commitments?
Okay, good.
So you're good to wait around for a little bit?
Okay, good.
Okay.
Hopefully it won't take too much time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to board member communications. Any members of the board want to make an announcement, report briefly on the activities, or ask a question for clarification? Director Farmer.
Thank you, President Gray. Yes, I just happen to have a My microphone here is different from everybody else's, so excuse me while I put it in closer position to my mouth here. So I just want to inform folks that a week from this Saturday, August the 24th, there's going to be a home resiliency tour at 1491 Bradford Road. And basically the folks that live there, especially the Teresa Lees, she's been very active with regard to how can we live more harmoniously with the planet. And so what her and her husband have at the home there, first off, they have 2 solar roof systems to obviously provide for electricity to kind of offset the use of having to rely on PG&E and so forth. So they, when they give an example of that, also they have small, medium, and large water tanks. They collect rainwater. They also have an example of a laundry to landscape system that irrigates fruit trees and other things that they grow in their garden. Then finally, they have an extensive garden with raised beds and so forth. So they show you a variety of different ways of growing food. And in fact, they actually grow tomatoes there, which is kind of unusual for Cambria. So if you're interested in seeing these, like I say, these alternatives, so to speak, as to how we live here in Cambria, the address is 1491 Bradford Road. Once again, this is on Saturday, August the 24th. And I'm wondering, that doesn't make sense. Today's the 18th, right?
It makes sense. Yeah. 24th is a Saturday.
It is
Today's the 15th.
the 15th. Okay. Well, there you are. So the person that's reading this is still trying to figure out the calendar. Once again, it's Saturday, August 24th from 10 a.m. till 1 p.m. And everybody is invited, and it's a slow permaculture sustainable solutions event. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Farmer. Any other announcements? I don't see none. We'll move on to public safety. Sheriff's Department report. Commander McDonald.
Hello, Mr. President, directors, staff, and public. A report for activity in July. In Cambria, we had 1 battery report. We had 29 disturbance calls in July. 17 of those were general disturbances, 8 fireworks complaints, 3 neighbor disputes, and 1 family dispute. There were no burglaries reported. We had 5 thefts reported. 3 were grand thefts with a value over $950 loss, and 2 petty thefts, those losses being under $950. There were 10 vandalism reports, which included 5 graffiti reports, 4 damages to vehicles, and 1 damage to a sign. There were no mail thefts reported. However, we had 4 phone scams reported in July. One of those was a Bitcoin related scam. So somebody was encouraged to send Bitcoin into some kind of a system, which resulted in a fairly significant loss. One was a road toll violation scam. They received a text message indicating that they had a road toll violation and they needed to arrange to fix that fine, of course, with gift cards. So, so I like to highlight all of the different forms these things take so that the awareness is high, that it's all kind of the same thread. It just comes in different storytelling methods. And then two of the other 2 were friend or relative related scams where somebody purports to be a friend or a relative and that they're in some dire strait and need emergency funds right away. We had 9 suspicious circumstance calls. 3 of those were suspicious circumstances, 4 suspicious persons, and 2 suspicious vehicles. And then we had the deputies conducted 16 enforcement stops, which included 14 vehicle stops and 2 pedestrian stops. The deputies engaged in 12 preventative patrol activities, which included 5 parked vehicle checks, 4 on-site activities, 2 foot patrols, and 1 extra patrol. And then I just wanted to make mention of a couple of arrests and circumstances that we had. On August 5th, the deputies working in Cambria became engaged in a short vehicle pursuit that went basically from the end of Main Street here at the Shell station up Highway 1 and ended at Burton and Highway 1 when the suspect crashed his vehicle. The driver was a 18-year-old male. He was ultimately arrested for evading hit and run and driving while intoxicated. We believe that he may be involved in the previous reckless driving racing activity in Cambria. So we're hoping that that does make a difference in that problem that we're having. And then on August 10th, 2 juvenile subjects were arrested for graffiti vandalism. That graffiti was the CV13 type graffiti that we've been seeing throughout the community. And so we're hoping that the arrest of those 2 juveniles may have an impact on others that would think of graffitiing in the community and maybe slow that down. Just because we've made these arrests doesn't mean that we've desisted in our efforts to find and hold others accountable for that behavior as well. So we will continue to be in the community. We have some detective resources that are following up specifically on these cases to try and gather as much information as possible so that we can maybe get associates and other involved parties identified and held accountable. And with that, I am available for any questions or concerns.
Yeah, thank you very much. Do the directors have questions? Director Farmer.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Commander, I just want to ask you with regard to the 2 young men that were arrested for the graffiti vandalism. Were you folks able to interview them? I guess I don't hesitate to use the word interrogate.
Yeah.
Were you able to interview them in any way, shape, or form and get additional information from them as to why they're doing this? What has brought them to our community to be doing this, and
Yeah.
what
So
their reasoning is?
So the level of behavior would be classified as a felony if committed by an adult. And as such, they were taken into temporary custody and delivered to the Juvenile Services Center. The questions that you're suggesting would more frequently be posed during any so if it is found to be true that they engaged in that behavior and they're put onto a probation status, our juvenile probation officers would delve into all of those issues, identify what services the family might need, and counseling and other things that might help redirect the behavior and find more positive outcomes for the young men.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Director Dean.
Thank you. Are we allowed to ask if these are juveniles that live here in Cambria or if they're visitors?
They are residents in the community. So
Thank-
then one other thing I forgot to mention is on the firework issue that we've been discussing for the last couple of months. There is a countywide uh, um, task force, if you will, or policy board that's being established. We're going to be having some meetings to establish with the county administrative office at the behest of Supervisor Gibson and Supervisor Paulding. Will be the fire department will be represented, the sheriff's office, and then some other county entities. So we will be having a conversation well before next year, next 4th of July, to talk about some strategies and other ways to get ahead of the firework problem.
Thank you.
Can I-
Dr. Dean again, yeah.
Can I ask one more question? Were these 2 juveniles caught in the act?
They were observed and videotaped by the reporting party, and then within an hour, the deputies located one of them, and that led to the arrest of that one, as well as an accomplice, or a second primary subject.
Well, thank you for all your work on that. Thank you.
Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you so much for your report. I do have a question. Could you explain what, under vandalism, you said there was one sign? Could you talk a little more about that incident?
I want to say it was right out here in the parking lot. There was a sign indicating no parking in a certain area, and somebody kicked it over. Ultimately, the sign itself wasn't damaged, but it was reported, and it did basically classify as a vandalism. But it was some kind of a parking direction sign that was right out here in the Vets Hall parking lot.
Thank you. Any more questions? Well, thank you very much. Excellent report, and thank you for the work you're doing.
All right, thank you.
Next up is Fire Chief Michael Berkey.
Good afternoon, President Gray, members of the board, members of the staff, and members of the community. So this is the fire chief's report for the month of July. So in the month of July, we had 2 fires. We had a total of 43 rescue and emergency services incidents. We had 4 service calls, 12 good intent calls, 3 false alarms and false calls, and then 1 severe weather and natural disaster call. As brief as that is, that kind of completes that portion of the report. I did want to take a moment, if I could, to recognize an employee that just recently resigned from our department, Jeff Luna. And although Jeff wasn't able to make it here today, I wanted to recognize him. He was with our department for about little over 6 years as a reserve. And so I just wanted to thank him for his service and the time that the commitment he had here. Jeff was always the guy that, again, he didn't work full-time hours, but he was somebody that we could call upon him in a time of need. And he would always show up smiling no matter what the circumstance. So I was very happy to have him with us. And I wish him the best in all of his future endeavors. So want to mention that. With that, that concludes my report, and I'm open to any questions.
Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Chief Berkey. I have a question on page 8 of your report. It's the map with the yellow and green circles.
Yes.
Can you tell me what yellow and green circles mean?
I believe those are just indicators of the numbers themselves. So anything over 10, I believe, turns to yellow. And then I believe that's the case. But I honestly don't have that legend on my map either, as far as why that changes the colors. And And we're trying to keep that pretty generic. There on the actual, what I can see is I can actually zoom into exactly what those addresses are. But obviously that's not appropriate for the public to see the addresses. So we wanted to keep it at that level. So again, I can get that answer for you, but I'm not 100% sure why the yellow and green,
Yeah.
what the differences are.
And I just have one more question.
Absolutely.
And that is on page 9. It says A shift, B shift, and C shift. I kind of could guess that it was day, PMs, and nights, but is that what it is?
Are you're talking about the incidents by shift?
Yeah.
Yeah, page 9 of the agenda. Yeah.
Yes. So those are just incidents by, yeah, those are the total incidents on that shift. So a shift is 2 days and then the next shift comes on for another 2 days. And so
Oh.
those, it's just compiled within those 2 days.
Okay, so it's
Morning,
not
night, yep,
okay,
yep, everything.
thanks.
Thank you, President
Farmer.
Gray. So, Chief Perky, it's always good to see you. I just want to ask you about, you said one natural disaster call, and this was in July, so that sounds a little unusual. So what was that?
There's a tree down. So yeah, as unusual as it is, we classify those under that type of a disaster. So,
Okay.
or a call.
Yeah.
So even though it's a tree down, most likely to wind,
Mhm.
we classify it like that.
All right. And, I feel a little awkward in asking you this, but so recently we had this, yesterday I was talking with some friends because we were discussing, well, the fact that both fire trucks went out at the same time. And I happened to mention, well, I had this experience where my car radio and my computer went down on the same day. Stuff happens, but there are people in the community that feel like, well, therefore, we're not really doing that good a job of maintaining our vehicles. And so if you could just explain exactly what did happen, and from my perspective, the sheer coincidence of it all, how both instances were able to be remedied, and how quickly we got the vehicles back, and therefore and so forth. Thank you.
Absolutely. And so you kind of hit the nail on the head. It is, I don't want to say an act of nature, but it kind of is. Having two problems at one time is not uncommon within even emergency services and other agencies. And believe me, I'm familiar with all the other agencies in our county and the state, and this happens very frequently. It's just one of those things that does happen. So to the answer of the maintenance that we do on those engines, we and the kind of longevity of the time that we have those engines in service, we're actually above the standard on that. And so it's not a maintenance issue. It wasn't an old engine type of issue. It was something that, again, just unfortunately happens when you have, emergency services that those engines are responding every day, all day long. And unfortunately, sometimes things break. So to specify exactly what happened to our primary engine, we had some brake issues. There was a component that broke, allowing that engine to not be safe to drive anymore. And then our backup engine, when it was in service, it had a fuel injector problem that went in, that it had to be, it was a power issue. It basically wouldn't get up to speed.
Mhm.
And so those both those incidents were mitigated very rapidly. Honestly, right now, if you talk to any mechanic or if you've taken your cars to the shop, there's a long hold on a lot of parts right now. It's been that way for quite some time. And so that takes quite a while for them. It's no different for emergency services or any of the big trucks or anything that's kind of on the roads today. So it's again, it's kind of a perfect storm right now with trying to get all of those things back and get them back in service as quickly as possible. But we were able to do it. The company that we used was, very rapid. They understood the significance of the situation, and we were able to get them back in service within, I believe it was within the week, or maybe just over a week, I think. And briefly, I want to thank again. I think General Manager McElhaney last board meeting mentioned that the immense thanks we have for Paso City and the other responding agencies around our allied agencies that we work closely with, and it's a the camaraderie between our departments is huge. And that's what I really want to emphasize, the fact that they were able to provide us in the middle of fire season, a fire engine, which again was very scarce. I reached out to every single agency in the area and they had they were all busy. So, and some of their engines were broke as well. So we were very lucky to get one. And I want to, again, express the immense thanks I have for that city for allowing us to use one of their fire engines in the meantime. So, I don't know if that answered every question you had, but, again, our fire engines are, when I say above standard, so NFPA has a standard, that, you know, the replacement of the fire engines, is typically anywhere over 10 years. I believe it's in 15 years. Sometimes it could be 20. And that's a first out engine or a backup fire engine. And so traditionally our replacement policy in the past has been 10 years. And so that's pretty good. And there's a lot of reasons for that. So our unique topography here in Cambria, along with the coastal influence, as you guys, I'm sure all know that live here, the salt water really plays a havoc on anything metal. So it's no different for our engines here. So we need to keep that process of the engine replacement up to speed, and that's really the only thing we can do is continue to keep them on a very stringent maintenance program, and then also a replacement program.
Well, that answer is certainly sufficient to me. I don't know if any other board members have any questions, but thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Any other questions? I really thank you. Thank you for your report, Chief. And actually, before Commander McDonald goes and you step down, I want to see if there's any public comment on either of these reports, because we didn't cover it for the sheriff. Anybody in attendance want to comment on either of the reports? Ms. Dodson, anybody online?
No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to both of you then.
Thank you very much.
By the way, I should mention the chief is going to be available. The chief and the general manager are going to be available. Meet the chief and the GM.
Next, Matt.
I believe that to be the 26th of
On the
August.
26th, okay, yeah,
Thank you.
26th of August. Great. And now it's time for public comment, which is comment on any item of interest to this jurisdiction that's not on the agenda today. First of all, I'll ask anyone in attendance if they'd like to comment in this section of the meeting. And seeing none. And Ms. Dodson, anyone online?
Yes, Claudia.
Is this Claudia Harmon-Worthen?
Yep, it
Yep.
is. Hi,
Oh, please start. Yeah.
thank you.
You got the floor.
Just briefly, I wanted to tell you a little bit about dark skies. I just want to give a little background, and then I'm going to ask you a question. First of all, when you put out light at your house or in a business, you want to make sure that it's useful. Is it targeted? Is it at a low level? Is it controlled? And is it a warm color? And the other things that are important about dark skies for Cambria and for everywhere in this country, Cambria's pretty lucky. We're about, one town out of, I don't know, about 20% or 18 or 20% of the world that can see the Milky Way. So we want to protect that. But that's just, that's about the dark skies. There's 5 or 6 different reasons why you want to protect the dark skies. It can really affect wildlife. It decreases safety and security if it's done improperly. And I see that a lot around town. It robs us of a night sky heritage, inhibits scientific research. It really harms human health if it's shining into bedroom light, into bedroom windows and trying to sleep with that. And the most important thing for today is that it wastes money. And it also is, if it's done improperly, it is a safety hazard. There are lights on the back of the Vets Hall that shine straight onto the highway. And as much as I try not to look at it, every time I drive by there, it blinds me, and I can't see for a few seconds after that. So the light, dark skies means that you light the ground, not the sky. So that's just a basic background. And the reason why I'm here during public comment is I would like very much if you'd be willing to allow me to give just a little tiny bit longer presentation about why and the benefits, just the benefits for the CCSD, and hoping that you'd let me allow me to be on the agenda in the very future. And I'll explain more about how this is going to benefit our community services district and the people in our community. So we take that into consideration, please?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, yeah, we'll take anything under consideration for the agenda, for future agendas, but appreciate your comments today. And we'll think about it, I guess.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much, Lottie.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, Don Howe.
Mr. Howell?
Oh, thank you, President Gray. Just very briefly, I just wanted to comment that I've been really impressed lately with the collegiality with which you board members are treating each other. Even though I know that you do not think alike, it's been very impressive, and I really wanted to just let you know that last week's board meeting was an absolute pleasure to watch. The discussion was not only entertaining, but it was substantive. I just can't tell you enough of how excellent that was. I just wanted you to hear that from somebody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments?
No.
So I'm glad that we were impressive on last week's meeting because it was quite, irregular because we had a substitute chair for the first 20 minutes, and then I came in and the substitute chair had to run the meeting remotely. So, we had some challenges there to her in, so we did. I'm glad we came across well. Anyway, no further comment. Like we'll move on. Oh, yeah. We'll move on to item 5A, which is a public hearing to discuss and consider adoption of resolution 27-2024, approving the final CCSD budget for fiscal year 2024-2025 and reserve for encumbrances fiscal year 2023-2024. I'll turn this over first of all to Mr. McElhenney, who has Ms. Fritz, I think, available via, there she is, yes, Denise Fritz, our finance manager. I'll turn it over to Mr. McElhenney first so he can introduce the item.
Thank you, President Gray. Agenda item 5A is a public hearing to discuss and consider adoption of resolution 27-2024, approving the final CCSD budget for fiscal year 2024-2025 and reserve for encumbrances fiscal year 23-24. I just wanted to start this quickly. Some of the things that we do as a board and staff is communicate each week before the board meeting to go over our agendas and ask any clarifying questions. And that's often very productive in clearing up any miscommunications or misunderstandings or questions about the board agenda. And through that process, we've made some minor changes to the budget narrative to provide for more clarification. So I just wanted to address some of those before we open the hearing and discuss it, because I know some directors may have some questions about it. I'll just verbalize some of these quick changes, but there was some language on, let me get to the budget narrative piece for you.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start with page 18 of your agenda packet. We're probably going to remove the paragraph, third paragraph, page 18, that says while the preliminary budget includes. We're going to remove that paragraph more than likely because it was a little confusing because we're now talking about the final budget, not the preliminary budget.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to page 21, second paragraph, beginning with over time as the district continues to maintain the fiscally enhanced preserve. We use the term that budgets for fire, parks and rec will continue to decline. We've rephrased that to state that general fund expenditures for fire, facilities, and resources and admin will continue to outpace revenues and impact operations and safety. Would you like me to repeat that, Vice President?
Oh,
Yeah, where is that?
Second paragraph, page 21.
Yeah, but
Starting with the word over time.
it's
Oh,
about,
great. Great.
seventh
Okay.
line down, right? Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And there's some other areas in which we cleaned up where we placed in budget assumptions. In the water services, wastewater, WRF, there was a sentence underneath that refers to goals. And that was an oversight because we don't want to confuse our strategic goals with some of the priorities within each of those departments. So we rephrased it as priorities. So for instance, WRF priorities for fiscal year 24-25 include. And that example can be found on page 25 of your agenda packet. Underneath, at the very bottom of the page where it says WRF budget assumptions, we've now changed that WRF goals. We've changed that to WRF priorities for fiscal year 24-25.
And on page 26.
And on page 26, thank you, Director Thomas. So those are just some of the minor cleanups we did with the budget narrative, and I wanted to make sure we address those before we get into the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of the budget. And I'm open to any questions. And if
Just
it-
I want to clarify on the change that was made on page, I guess it was 21. That sentence starting with overtime, it would now read.
I'll read it again for you,
yeah,
President Gray, if you like.
yeah.
Over time, as the CCSD continues to maintain the Fiscally Ranch Preserve and take ownership of more open space parcels with insufficient funding, the general fund expenditures for fire, facilities and resources, and admin will continue to outpace revenues and impact operations and safety.
Thank you very much. Any before, I mean, I guess in this portion, we'll turn this over to Ms. Fritz soon, shortly, but any more questions of Mr. McElhenney first from the board? None. And do you want to, Director Thomas?
Thank you, President Gray. And also on the top, at the very top of page 25, I also believe the capital expenditures totaling 448, including projects where it says approved at the R&I committee, I believe that would be endorsed.
Thank you, Director Thomas. We did make a couple of those changes, changing approved to endorse. We also, on page 24, recognize the Finance Committee in addition to the Resources and Infrastructure Committee as far as the Finance Committee endorsing, and I'm paraphrasing here, endorsing the budgeting of some of our CIP projects.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I was going to, I don't know if this is Ms. Fritz's area, but I was going to note the corrections that I think several of us found to make in the CIP list. And you want to, and we had a handout of a corrected version of the CIP list.
Thank you, President Gray. We did, and it should be in front of you.
It should be also on the online.
It is.
Yes, it's posted on the website.
Yeah.
And to clarify on that, as we've made multiple changes to our CIP list, some things get jumbled a little bit. And so you'll notice in the board packet agenda for our CIP list, you will see that we have B for budgeted, and you have your priorities 2 and 3. And then we go down and we start to see the totals of all of those areas. You'll see priority 1 with actual funds associated with the priority 1, yet a lot of those ones are missing from the CIP list because we recategorize some of those 1s to 2s. And so that updated CIP list, which was adjusted by Ms. Fritz, should be correct now in front of you.
Thank you. I guess without any further questions, we'll turn this over. I'll let you turn it over to Ms. Fritz. And
Yeah, thank you,
Ms.
President
Fritz,
Gray.
are you there? I see you up there on the screen. Hello.
Hi. So I just wanted to first thank the general manager and President Gray for rearranging the agenda items to allow me to attend to a family matter that I was unable to reschedule. So I appreciate your flexibility in that. This is the public hearing to discuss and consider the adoption of Resolution 27, 2024, approving the final CCSD budget for the fiscal year 24-25 and reserve for encumbrances for fiscal year 23-24. So the preliminary budget was approved on June 20th of 2024. And this final budget includes all of those same projections, the budget projections. So the operating budget has not changed from the approval of the preliminary budget. This table of numbers here is outlining and summarizing where we ended fiscal year 23-24 and the final budgets for 24-25 for you all to get a complete picture. This final budget includes the final budget of the operations, the salary schedules, organizational charts, and the reserve estimates for the new year. The main component of this budget, aside from the narrative, which is the first year it's been included in the final budget, that is not something that has been included before. And all of the schedules attached are all the same from the preliminary budget. I would like to turn your attention to page 89 of the agenda packet, which is where you will see the reserve projections. And this is where, of course, it's unaudited, where we find ourselves at the end of the fiscal year 23-24, and where we are projecting to be at the end of fiscal year 24-25 based upon our preliminary budget numbers in the reserves. And then on page 76, you will see what we call the reserve for encumbrance requests. And this is part of what you're voting on today to move these expenditures forward for 24-25. And what these numbers represent are all the different capital projects that have been budgeted in previous years. And we are asking to move those expenditures, the balances forward to 24-25 so we can complete those projects. And so with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Just to clarify page numbers here, the encumbrances are on page 76 of the budget document. They're on page 90 of the agenda, just so that.
Correct. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the other, so it's the last page of the budget, basically.
Yes. So it's page 89 and 90 of the agenda packet.
Thank you. I think Vice President Scott has her light on.
Yes. That's okay. You can go ahead and take somebody else's question.
Anybody else
because
any other question? Any other members, directors have questions? Director Thomas.
Just a thank you. And in our preliminary budget discussion, I had pleaded for a simple rack up of what the loans are that we have as a district outstanding, and you have provided them very clearly. They're on page 230 of the agenda packet in the for those who are looking for that, the very last page of the agenda packet. So it may not be in the budget, but I just wanted to bring this up in the context that I had asked this to be in the budget, but I think Ms. Fritz wisely put that in the quarterly, the fourth quarter update. So I gather this will be in each quarterly update, and thank you for that clear articulation of the outstanding loans. A lot of folks have asked for that, and so that's very clear. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Director Farmer.
Thank you, President Gray. These are questions and also just observations that I'm not all that happy about making. So I'm just noticing here on page 56 of the agenda packet under expenses. Let me take my glasses off so I can see better. Expenses for the WRF salary and wages, $142,000. It's just unfortunate that we have to basically have 2 full-time employees overseeing a facility, overseeing and maintaining a facility that is not operational. Just kind of a sad state of affairs, and it is what it is. Also, I wanted to ask, and of course we have the notification there at the top of page 57 as to our annual debt service. And I should make a comment here. We just, I think it's in this particular expenditure report where we're paying our biannual, in other words, twice a year amount to the to Western Alliance Bank, which we began in 2014 and which will end in 2034. So we're exactly halfway at the halfway point of paying off the facility, and hopefully that it won't be, how could you say it? Never mind, since I can't remember the word I wanted to use, maybe I'm not supposed to say it. I'd just like to ask a question also on page, this is still regarding the WRF. With regard to WRF operations here on page 59, and we have a deficit of $190,000. And then on the next page 61, we have WRF capital of, I guess that's a surplus, so to speak, or an amount of $190,000. Are these amounts, since they're exactly the same as that, just a coincidence? And can you explain to someone like myself exactly what each of those numbers mean?
Okay, so you kind of had it backwards. So on page 58 or 59, the WRF operations has a budget surplus of $190,000. And on page 61, let's look at page 60. It's a little more clear that we have scheduled to do some maintenance and some capital projects. You can see there's updating of the chemical pumps, UV ballasts, and UV bulbs, and that will spend the $190,000. So page 60 is a deficit of 190, and it's being covered by the operating net income of shown on page 58 for the WRF operations.
All right. So if I could just ask you one more general question.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote this down just about 2 minutes ago. What is the state of district finances? I know that's a broad question to answer. I guess that's just for the well-being, let's say, so we can sleep better, us board members and ratepayers. Is that a fair question to ask you?
Sure. I feel, and I think it's written in here somewhere, but I feel like that the district finances are really strong. I think that under the current leadership of general manager and the board, that we're always looking for ways to create efficiencies, reduce costs in all areas. You know, much like us moving to a different building, and which is going to save money. It may seem like a little bit of money, but every bit helps. And so I think we're always looking at, for that. I think one thing that so I think that the overall state of the financial state of the district is healthy, and that, you know, we are proactively doing things, and such as our current, you know, our changes in our investment policies and all of those things. I think one thing to remember, which we are addressing in the finance committee for our long range financial planning, is that we have a lot of deferred maintenance, even though it seems like we're always asking for money to do projects. I think that getting a handle on exactly how big our deferred maintenance is within the district, and coming up with a clear plan on how to address those needs. For an example, a new fire truck, which we need, and some of these bigger projects. That's always going to be kind of looming out there. And so planning for the future and making sure that our infrastructure is sound and able to last for a really long time. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. And if I could just make one more comment or observation. Thank you, Ms. Fritz. You know, noticing on page 65, right there in about the middle of the page, where in the wastewater department, the $400,000 that we pay to PG&E every year. I just hope that folks understand, and I think most members of the public do, that are paying attention to what's been happening over the years, that these energy conservation measures that have added up to a considerable expense, let's say with regard to just totally upgrading and improving our wastewater plant, ultimately this figure like I said, this figure of $400,000 with regard to our electric bill will decline to some substantial amount because of the improvements that are being made at the wastewater plant. That was the main reason for doing all of this. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Director Dean.
Okay, just a question on terminology on page 56 and 57. On the WRF operations, it says EWS base, and the same thing on page 57 where we're talking about the WRF, it says EWS. We changed the name a few years ago to WRF, and I think it needs to be consistent throughout the document. And we even notified the bank that we borrowed the money from that the name had changed to WRF. So I'd like to see in the next document that comes forward that carrying through as a WRF.
And so you're talking about the name on the actual accounts, is
Yes.
that right?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the line item because the accounts themselves are correctly named, but the line item, this is
Yeah, not the,
category 40 under sales. It's a line item. And
Yeah, so that is the account name in our system, so I will have to go in there and see if I can change it, or how. I know I can change it, and I think it should be fine, but yes, I will have to go in the system and change it.
thank you.
Yeah, if I could just make a comment that to paraphrase Joe Friday from Dragnet, the name was changed to protect the guilty. Just want to throw that in there. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? We can come back. We'll come back for a discussion after public comment. Any more questions for clarification or whatever? Okay. I'll open this hearing to public comment. First of all, anybody in present here wish to comment on this matter? Ms. Dodson, do we have anybody online?
Yes, David Pearson.
And Mr. Pearson.
Yes, good afternoon, board and general public, general manager and staff. Again, speaking about the budget, surpluses that are indicated in the administrative department for both last year's budget and this year's budget. Last year's budget ended up with a surplus in the admin department of about $120,000. And that is now being put into the reserves for the general fund. Some of that money came from the enterprise funds. And I think that is inappropriate and should not be done. The ratepayers never said that they were ready to start paying for the fire department, the admin for the fire department and facilities and resources through their rates, and they shouldn't. The same thing with this year's budget. The indication is a surplus in the admin department of $220,000. And once again, if we hit our budget numbers, which obviously we won't, but again, at the end of the year, if there's a surplus in admin, it should not go into the reserves for the general fund. It should be redistributed properly. The other item I'd like to address is the fact that the new budget, and they've done an excellent job, and Ms. Fritz has done an excellent job of straightening out the finances and getting the budgets right and everything. But still, we have all of this deferred maintenance in the general fund that is not addressed once again in this budget for 24-25. And at some point in time, we're going to have to start addressing that. As Ms. Fritz said, we need a new fire engine, but we certainly don't have any money to pay for such a thing. So please, board, start doing your diligence on getting us some more revenues for the general fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Anyone else online?
No.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I will close the public hearing and bring this matter back to the board for discussion. Anyone wish to discuss or make a motion? Yeah. Director Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, President Gray, and thank you, Mr. Pearson. Yeah, I was planning to ask the same question, and I'd like to hear a good explanation from staff regarding the the intent to carry forward the administrative surpluses, just to make very clear and transparent the logic behind that.
Thank you. Ms. Fritz, maybe,
I'll start it, President
Mr.
Gray.
McElhenney,
Director
yes.
Thomas, thank you for the question. So philosophically, the staff will listen to the board in terms of where they would like those surpluses to go. As for staff, our perception and understanding of the administration department is that moving forward, we have to support all of the departments within our organization, to include water and wastewater. And a lot of our staff time in administration is in support of utilities. And so as we look to make changes like moving our administration department or upgrading our Laserfish systems or record keeping, digitizing a lot of our utility records, we have to account for that financially. And that's how we do that is, we charge an overhead allocation to all of our different departments. And if we have a surplus, we can take that surplus legally and be in compliance with Prop 218 and put that in reserves for when we do need to do major overhauls of the administration function. And so that is our goal, is that if we do have a surplus from those overhead allocations, that we're taking those surpluses, putting them in the general fund and planning for, some of those rainy days that could be ahead of us. And I hope that explains it.
Yeah. Ms. Fritz, do you have anything to add?
I would just like to say that the source of the revenue in the general fund are property taxes and the primarily the mission country agreement that we have. There are no wastewater WRF rates going into the general fund.
And you're talking about the general fund revenues.
Correct. Yes,
and not the allocation of administration specifically.
Correct. Yeah, and so we're following. I mean, the policy is that we're allowed to, and like general manager stated, I'm not going to reiterate what he said, but that we are within policy to do that. We are in discussions through the finance committee to talk about the overhead allocation policy, and that would be where, like general manager said, we will, if the board directs us to allocate any sort of net income that is generated from those fee sources that I just mentioned, allocating those savings out to the various enterprise funds or the other departments, since facilities and resources and fire does pay their overhead allocation, then that's what we'll do. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. There, just for the benefit of the public, there is a subcommittee of the finance committee that has been assigned to this task of working on an updated allocation of administrative costs to the other departments and other funds, and they will be reporting back later this fall with recommendations, hopefully to resolve these questions. Thank you. Mr. Director Thomas.
Yeah, I think, thank you for that. And those are, quite clear explanations. And I don't know if it's appropriate, but I think as we've heard Mr. Pearson bring this up to the board 2 or 3 times and also to the finance committee, I thought it would be useful to hear from, with the claim that the district is misusing public funds. And, that's a serious statement. And I'd love to hear from Mr. Carmel that confirming what we've heard, that this practice is entirely within the lanes.
Yeah, Mr. Carmel.
Thank you, Director Thomas. I am not an expert in finance, as you all know, but I did reach out to a number of professionals, some of who are very highly qualified, and posed that question. And the unanimous answer was what we're doing is perfectly legal. And it's done routinely in many local agencies. So that's about as far as I'll go here, but I do have some written communications that underscore that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Any other discussion? Is your light on, Director Dean? It's hard to tell sometimes. Okay, good. Yeah. I could make just a little comment on the budget process, which I've been connected with quite a bit through finance. I also have want to really give a shout out to Denise Fritz and Mr. McElhenney for developing this budget, because we're doing a couple of things new that had not been done. One thing had not been done ever, which I thought it was sort of logical to do, is to have a budget narrative with the final budget. And it wasn't simply, we did this for the first time this time around. It wasn't simply a matter of just taking the budget narrative from the preliminary budget and just tacking it on to the final budget. A number of things had to be changed in wording and tenses. Of a lot of copy editing had to be done, and a certain amount of just upgrading of the content to updating the content. So that was something I hopefully will make it a little more informative for people who go online and click the budget and look at the final budget, and they actually see explanation of what's there, which I think is very important. And I think the CIP list is again evolving into something that will be actually very useful. We're still working on it was just a simple list of stuff, projects that we were planning to do at some point at one, that was what it started out as. We have made it more informative as to how much money has been spent on what we're actually working on, but we're moving toward gradually. This is something else is going on at Finance Committee, going toward a long-term capital plan that we actually try to, as I think Mr. Pearson was alluding to, we actually try to get a handle on all the deferred maintenance that has to be done, all the projects that have to be done like 5 years out, not just next year. And then to compare how our current budget is, sort of measures up to that task, and what kind of progress we're making towards those goals. So the long-term plan, I think, over the next year will be fleshed out, and the next budget will have a CIP list with a little more focused on what really takes priority and what doesn't, and what we really need to spend, and over a period of time. So we're moving in the right direction with that. There were some rough edges this time just because we're scrambling to get more information in there, but I think it's moving in the right direction. So I think that those two items, I think I want to salute the staff for. Yeah.
Thank you, President Gray. And again, I want to give kudos to Ms. Fritz on some of these changes.
Yeah.
And it definitely is an evolving art that we have in front of us in terms of crafting this budget narrative and getting it right, and then finding a few more things that need to be tweaked. And that's especially true with the CIP list, because there's a lot more growth that needs to happen with that as well. And then to circle back around to our financial health and long-term replacement of some of our infrastructure and equipment. While we are healthy, that is one of the things that weighs on my mind as we move forward. We have a lot of things coming up ahead of us, from our fluid lines, Stewart Street tanks, fire engines. And so with the change in some of the leadership and finance and some of the things that we're doing in terms of trying to be fiscally responsible and cutting costs, I have a positive outlook on where we're going to be in 3 to 4 years.
Good. Thank you. I'll
Just
Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And one other thing, really good work, Ms. Fritz, really good work. The one thing that I had stressed in the past, you followed through with, whereas there are strategic goal alignment that are within the budget or within the narrative. And so I truly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Dr. Thomas.
Ready for a motion?
Yeah, definitely.
I move that, including the revisions to the budget narrative articulated by the general manager, the board adopt Resolution 27-2024, approving the final CCSD budget for fiscal year 24-25 and reserve for encumbrances for fiscal year 23/24.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the board approve, that the board adopt resolution 27/2024 approving the final CCSD budget for fiscal year 2024-25 and the reserve for encumbrances fiscal year 2023-2024. Could I have a roll call, please?
But including.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, including the corrections in the narrative as noted by the general manager. And I've written them down too, and just in case you need to see them. Thank you. I'll roll call, please.
Director Thomas,
Aye.
Vice President Scott,
Aye.
Director Dean,
Aye.
Director Farmer,
Aye.
President Gray.
Aye.
And
Well-
if I may,
Yes, please.
I would like to add my praise and thanks to Ms. Fritz and to our staff as well for this excellent report. Thank you.
Moving on to consent agenda. As I said earlier, we'll be doing the manager's reports at the end of the business today. This is the 3 items on the consent agenda. All matters on the agenda will be taken up by one motion unless a director wishes to separate one motion for consideration on its own. If not, we can entertain quick questions for clarification from the directors on any of these matters. Is anybody wants to separate an item first of all? See none, so we'll take it as a single motion. Any questions? Again, brief and for clarification. Director Dean.
Okay. On pages 137 and 138, there is a total of 8 entries for Grammarly. How many Grammarly accounts do we have?
We have a Grammarly account for every management and confidential employee. So that includes all department managers, the general manager, and myself.
Okay, thank you.
So, Director Dean, what that is doing, why you're seeing so many lines is because we're spreading out that cost between all the different departments.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other people look here? Any other questions? I have any. This is actually, I don't want to make a too long an item of this, but it should be noted that the quarterly investment report is part of this consent agenda. Ms. Fritz is here to ask if you have any questions about that report. Any details of it. I guess it's something we'll be having every quarter as a consent agenda item. So if there's anything about it that's not crystal clear, it should, get clarification. Dr. Dean.
I don't have any questions about it, but I do want to say I appreciate it being in here. Thank you.
I think it's very good. It's another, I'm glad it's here too. It's very, it's very good to see that we're getting a healthy return on our investments too. Market rate return, basically. So if there are no further questions, Director Farmer.
Thank you. Just a comment here, just hopefully create a little humor. So I'm noticing here on page 135, and I overlooked the opportunity to just check on my computer and find out exactly who the American Waterworks Association is that we pay dues to every year. But I just thought it was interesting that the dues are $501. And I don't know, just kind of struck me as cute. I don't know what else to say. I mean, who do you pay $501 for?
I don't know. Is that
our membership? So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay.
In
Yeah.
case it puts a smile on anybody's face. Apparently it didn't. So there we are.
Well, is that the executive membership or whatever, right? I say anyway, I'll entertain a motion.
Do you want to ask for public comment
Oh,
first?
sorry about that. Yes. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda from people in attendance? Anyone online?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. I will entertain a motion now. Dr. Dean.
I move that we approve all items on the consent agenda, which includes 7A, 7B, and 7C.
Second.
Cool. I'll second that.
Yes, we moved and seconded that this board approve items 7A, 7B, 7C in one motion as the consent agenda. Roll
Direct-
call.
Director Dean.
Aye.
Director Farmer.
Aye.
Director Thomas.
Aye.
Vice President Scott.
Aye.
President Gray.
Aye. Move on to item 8A in regular business, which is the fourth quarter, fiscal year fourth quarter budget report. I don't know, is Ms. Fritz, you're still here? And Mr. McElhenney, I'll turn it over to you first, and then if Ms. Fritz, if she wants to
Thank you, President Gray.
explain anything.
Agenda item 8A, receive and file the fourth quarter budget report for fiscal year 2023, 2024. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Fritz.
Okay, well, thank you, General Manager. I would like to point out that there was an adjustment for the water meter replacement loan, a budget adjustment, and that is reflected in this fourth quarter report. And again, these are not audited. So this is just where we were based upon when we closed our books for the year, but we'll be going through the audit shortly. And I have listed out just in general the summary for each fund, and each fund except for how the capital outlay for the WRF is, you know, we had $36,449 of expenditures in that, which were covered by the WRF operations. So we were able to stay within budget and end the year with a net income in each fund. And then I have also detailed out the capital project activities for each fund that happened throughout the year, which is in more detail and exact expenditure amounts on the CIP, on the new CIP list. I also, as Director Scott and Director Thomas pointed out, as a request by the board on page 230, I included the debt listing that we have. And so I've detailed out each obligation, also where we are in the year of the term. So you can see there's two that were actually were in the last year of. So the F-350 truck and the Batcon truck will be paying off this year. Also, I've detailed out what the payments are. Some of those are monthly, some of those are yearly, so or biannually, so I should probably put that in there. And then what our balance was as of 6/30/24. So since this is a new report and it's based upon feedback by the board, I'm happy either you guys can give me your feedback today, or you can send me emails and we can, this could be a work in progress for you, but I hope it gives you a little bit more information. I've also included, per usual, that I've been doing each quarter on page 229 of where we are with the SST projects and expenditures. So with that, I think I'll open it up for any questions that anyone has.
Any questions from directors? Vice President Scott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I would really like a total because I had to use my calculator to add things up. So, for instance, balance as of 6/30/2024, I had to add that up. So it would
Okay.
be great to have a total. Thanks.
What page is that? So
230.
230. Oh, this is on the loans. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Director Farmer. Director Farmer.
Would you like to, well, okay, I'll just go ahead. And by the way, I'm realizing I'm like talking more than I normally do, so my apologies for that, but I guess this is what's happening today. So I just want to ask real quickly, and I know Ms. Fritz basically touched base on what I'm about to ask. You're on page 156 under Water Fund, WRF Operations and Capital Outlay. So WRF operations revenue, in other words, what we collect from the ratepayers, operations revenues are greater than expenditures. The operations fund ended the fiscal year with a surplus of $366,266. And Ms. Fritz, just a few minutes ago, you mentioned where those monies were spent, where there was some kind of deficit. So could you remind us what those were again, please? Thank you.
The I think I had mentioned that line right underneath the operations, it's saying WRF capital outlays where we expensed $36,449. If the line you're referring to with the WRF operations, there was a net income of $366,266, which can all be seen on the, the detail of that can be seen within the budget schedules.
So obviously what I should have done is looked at the budget schedule instead of asking.
Yeah, so I'm trying to
Yeah,
find
no.
it
So
right here.
my apologies. For
No,
putting you on
that's
the spot.
okay. So for the WRF capital specifically, it's on page 204. And again, so this is where I'm trying to give you as much detail. The 204 is just a summary where we spent 36,448, but that's where the CIP list can come in handy. And where again, I think everyone has mentioned this, us are expanding the CIP list to give more information. So just bear with me here. I'm trying to find the page. You can see on page 225, we spent $11,721 on the in-stream flow study and $24,728 on EIR consulting for the WRF. And that totals the expenditures of $36,449. So that'll give you the total detail.
Okay, so, and perhaps it's just my ignorance, my naivete. I don't know how else to describe it. So what happens to the rest of that surplus money? Or have you already answered that and I didn't understand it?
No, so the surplus just goes into the reserves for the specific department. So the WRF will get, and it's not in this one, it's in the budget, but if you look at the reserve, the reserve presentation in the final budget amount, which is on page, sorry to go back to a whole different thing, but on page 89.
89, yeah. 89.
Yeah, we'll be putting that money into the reserves for the WRF. And so that will increase the reserves. That money will be invested until at what time that we need it. Now, some of those surpluses are earmarked for some of those encumbrance roll forwards, the 23, 24 to 24 that you just approved. So some of those are earmarked for projects that are budgeted for, and so they will be used as those projects get underway. Or
Right,
they'll
well,
go into the reserves and be invested, and we'll be making some interest on it until the time that we need to spend that money.
thank you, Ms. Fritz, for being patient with me and the remainder of the board members and anybody else that's listening.
Fine.
Thank you so much. And hopefully when this happens next year, I can go back to this meeting and realize, well, never mind.
Thank you.
Thanks, sorry.
Director Thomas.
Thank you, President Gray. You'd asked for input on the debt listing on page 230. An excellent suggestion from Vice President Scott. And I was also thinking that a column showing the original loan principal would be informative on this table.
Okay.
There's, you have two columns. We have original principal and remaining principal.
Yeah, and the principal amount right here should be well, that's just the payment actually. So I just have the balance as of a certain date. So yes, I can definitely put a column in there.
Yeah, those are payments to principal, right? They're not.
Yes, that is a payment
Payments to principal within the year. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Those could be labeled ahead or across the principal and interest of paid during the current year.
Okay.
Okay. We'll work on it. Okay. Thank you. Any other Any other comments or discussion? I think we need to get public comment. Anybody in the hall want to comment? Anybody, Ms. Dodson, anybody online?
No.
Okay, thank you. Bring it back to the board for discussion and in a motion. Dr. Thomas.
I would move that we receive and file the fourth quarter budget report for fiscal year 2023, 2024.
Well, second it.
It's moved and seconded that we receive and file the investment report. Sorry, receive and file the fourth quarter budget report for fiscal year 23, 24. Roll call, please.
Director Thomas.
Aye.
Director Dean.
Aye.
Director Farmer.
Aye.
Vice President Scott.
Aye.
President Gray.
Aye. At this point, I think we can we have time for the manager reports, being only 2:20. So let's just turn this over to Mr. McElhenney, I think, to start the show.
Thank you, President Gray. And with your permission, I'll move the finance manager's report ahead of my report.
Okay.
And let Ms. Fritz try not to cry too much as she drops her daughter off at college here
Okay,
later
great.
today.
So Ms. Fritz, you can proceed.
I take that back. She's already on her way
She is?
and not on
Okay.
Zoom, so I will take over
Okay.
that.
Fine.
So with that being said, the finance manager report is in front of you with our various different fund balances. The only thing that I would touch base on as kind of circling back to our investment report, which again, I want to give kudos to Ms. Fritz for working with us on that, as we've seen significant returns on our investments in comparison to where we were conservatively investing within our LAIF fund approximately a year ago. I don't have the exact numbers, but based on this last quarterly report, there was about $125,000 in revenue generated. And I think that's our third report on such investments. So I want to say we're approaching the $400,000 range in terms of returns on our investments, in which in previous years, I think at the most we saw around $80,000 or $90,000. So it's a pretty good turnaround for the district in terms of finding ways to enhance our revenues. And with that, I will do my best to answer any questions on the finance report.
Any questions on the finance report? No questions. Move on. We'll move on, I guess, to the general manager's report.
Okay, thank you, President Gray. My general manager report is in front of you. And as we learn to streamline the meetings a little bit, I won't go into too much detail other than what's here. I do want, we did put out a press release that our Cambria Community Service District was awarded a Transparency Certificate of Excellence from the Special District Leadership Foundation. And that I worked with Ms. Dodson on putting together our application. We demonstrated all the different ways that we are trying to be transparent, to include, our community outreach letters and GM letters, the way the website is constructed, accessibility and things of that nature. And we were awarded our transparency certificate. So that was, thank you. Thank you. I also want to, we have held interviews for our open vacancy for the maintenance technician, and we have selected some top candidates that are going to move forward to a second interview that should hopefully take place by next week. And our hope is we should have that position filled within the next couple of weeks. And Mr. Geary has been key with that. He held the interviews along with two of his staff to evaluate the applicants, and they were pleased with what they found. As always, I'll have a meet the GM this month on the 26th, and look forward to meeting everybody there. And I will take any questions.
Questions from the directors? I just wanted to, and I think it's in here, is the move to the Main Street location is to be completed on November 4th, is it? Is that when we reopen there?
Are you good? November 1st, I believe,
1st,
is when we would finalize
Right.
the move-in date. We have some overlap there from the old building to the new building to allow for the
Yeah.
move. So there is some overlap where you'll see essentially 2 rent payments. We also have to do some significant maintenance to the existing building to return it into the way it was. We've been in there for quite a long time, so there's holes that need to be patched in terms of nail holes and desks that need to be moved and things of that nature. So there'll be a little bit of overlap, but we hope to be fully moved in by November 1st. But some of us will make that transition a little bit earlier for timing.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Dean.
A couple of members of the public have asked me about your lead-lined office. Whether or not you're going to be able to get Wi-Fi and cell service in your lead-lined room.
Thank you, Director Dean. I don't think it's going to be an issue, but I'm sure we can figure it out. But yeah, I haven't looked that far into it, but
you'll be safe in there anyway.
I will be safe.
Sounds pretty good, actually. I hadn't thought of that. Had we thought of that? I don't know. Okay, that's good. I'll take public comment on the general manager's report. Anybody wish to comment here in attendance? Anybody online?
No.
Okay. If there's no further questions, I think we've had general managers in finance, facilities and resources manager.
I just wanted to comment briefly. The wavelength of telecommunications waves is much different from the wavelength of stuff coming in from space that I think they were concerned about for the X-rays. Much different wavelength.
It's like
from a physics lever.
Yeah.
Well, I used to have an X-ray license, so I should have known that.
Mr. Geary, thank you.
Thank you, President and Board. As you can tell, we're going to be doing a presentation today of some of the stuff we've been doing. I know it's been pretty basically fast forward on our department. There's been a lot of things, a lot of movement, and I know especially with one of our individuals that's moved on, and we're scrambling trying to fill that position to get us still moving forward on what we're doing. So the first thing that I have there is the mowing along. So one of the things that after the whole weed abatement and stuff, we ended up noticing some of the areas on our ranches we need to go back and touch up. It's the regrowth is coming back pretty good. So we're going to be sending them out there with our tractors and the flailers. Ongoing mowing with the CCSD properties to maintain weed control. The focus is on the east and west ranches, which need some touching up to be completed. The crews have a deadline of September 1st due to the nesting season commencing. It's also including the Santa Rosa Trail, which needs extensive vegetation and tree branch removal. Closure of this area may be implemented during that time. I know that's going to be a big concern because I know there's quite a bit of foot traffic goes through there. There is actually the trails more or less have been taken over by the poison oak and stuff of that nature. So we kind of held off on that one, and we're looking into getting involved in that one here probably within the next 2 weeks. September 1st, after the end of the nesting season, that's where we're going to be more or less hitting a lot of the tree removal and different things of that nature to clear areas. That was a big concern that we had right before weed abatement about trimming out some of the trees and nesting. So that's why we held off on a lot of that. So the next one that we have is going to be the encampment removal. This is just one of them that we've actually come across. The county, or not the county, Caltrans. They ended up doing the removal of debris and stuff of that nature off of Highway 1 there at Santa Rosa Creek. When they ended up doing that, it dispersed them into our open spaces down into the repertoire for the conservation easement and all that other Coastal Commission and the Department of Fish and Wildlife. There was quite a bit that was down in there. There's been a very little activity within the district recently. Last week, we removed basically 9 cubic yards of debris, approximately about 3,200 pounds from the Santa Rosa Creek embankment next to Highway 1 and Steelhead Park. We've known it to be part of one individual, but there were several locations within that area that was scattered. It was more or less just put away. So we ended up picking up all that. This one here with the labor and the materials and the fees, approximately, it was only about $700. That was us doing it. And it was a matter of 3 hours on our behalf of our crew. There was only 3 of us at that time. Our department has a better presence patrolling the area now known for activities. We're training, actually, yeah. been training the crews what to look for in the proper guidelines for the state and the county. That's the biggest thing that they're implementing, and that's what I'm pushing for with our guys, especially the easements that we currently have with our open spaces. So, and one of our number one things is making the headway contact. That's the very first thing that we do is make contact, let them know, this is the conservation easement and what we have, everything within our district and their concerns. As the commander for the graffiti, the sheriff's department. So these are one of the areas that we ended up repairing, turning around, and repainting. We've come across several different areas. This one was just last week that we turned around and tackled. There's been some graffiti activity in the CCSD. We've been on the outlook for several areas that we're familiar with. We've been removing and covering it up, preventing it from becoming an eyesore to the public. The ongoing cleanup as of today for our department has been over about $1,200 so far for the materials and labor. I know we did turn around and purchase, paint and stuff of that nature, and that's the most expenditures right there. You're looking about roughly about $150 a jug, or a 5-gallon pail. But this one here, yeah, we spent roughly about 2.5 hours on this one here. We tried to clean it as best we could, and then we looked at it, and there was no way it was going to be removable. So we went ahead and took the judgment call to turn around and repaint it. This one here is actually off of the Main Street passage from Main Street to the East Ranch. They're on the path. So moving forward, we're planning for the future. I know it's hard and rewarding in the end. That's the biggest thing that I tell my guys. It's momentarily. Recruitment has started for the new replacement within the department. The first round has already been completed. They're going to be moving on. This individual will move on to the second one with the GM. We're looking forward to the new hire. And, planning for scheduling for the work for the fall and the winter is the next thing that we're going to be doing. And I'll be honest with you, in the year that I've been here, it's been a solid year, and I'm just like dumbfounded with some of the stuff. I look back through my notes. What I have learned with everything that's been going on in my department is just making sure that the guys are pleasable. I mean, they're happy with our, more or less, our workloads. There's times where we have to get down and dirty, and they do. And I got to hand it to the newest crew that we do have. I'm more or less speechless with that, with their ability, and let alone their willingness to do what they do. And also, from the support from, you guys as the board, and also with the GM, everybody in the staff, the water department and the wastewater. I know I've collaborated with them quite a bit with different projects and different things. My anticipation for the next year is not going to be easy. Every year is, like I said, it's hard and rewarding in the end. And that's my biggest thing. And that's a full commitment you have from me, and especially for my guys moving forward from this point. And we hope with this other third person that's coming back in, we'll have that same mentality and that drive. That's my report for this.
Thank you, Mr. Geary. Any questions from the board? Director Thomas.
Thank you, President Gray, and thank you, Mr. Geary. Another great report, and I would just ask, in the slides, I can tell that they're very clear and informative, but I can't read them from here. And
Okay.
if there's a way we could maybe get them posted on the agenda, at least the morning of, I know. Got so much work. I'm not asking for them to be in the packet. I know it takes some lead time, but that would be great if at least I could skim through those so that I can ask intelligent questions.
I agree.
I'm
I know
sure that there's other folks on Zoom that probably also want that. Yeah.
Correct. And I do agree. This one here is just, it's been so fast forward with a lot of the stuff. A lot of our common procedures that we have is where we take pictures of everything as beginning end to end. And this whole deal with the weed abatement that kicked off in May the 15th when we started, we just lost all contact with that. And I was scrambling, trying to get pictures of stuff together, and I actually went out and took some more just to clarify what we ended up having. It's just, like I said, it's been fast forward on it, but I will make that adjustment.
Director Dean.
Perhaps as Director Thomas is saying, I see that you had a written copy and that you were going by as you gave your report, but perhaps that could be a handout at the meeting and then attached to the agenda for the record after the fact. Is that?
It's posted online the minute he sends it to me. So it's been posted online.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions?
President
Oh.
Gray, may I?
Oh, Mr. McElhenney, yeah.
I just wanted to circle around on Mr. Aguirre and he's pretty humble. We're talking about the budget. We're talking about a lot of different things that Facilities and Resources is doing and responsible for. He's showing you some of the work he's done with the graffiti and the homeless encampment cleanups. Prior to Mr. Aguirre's arrival, Facilities and Resources was in a structural deficit anywhere between $80,000 to $100,000 a year. In one fiscal year, with the change in our philosophy on how we were going to handle some of our expenditures in Facilities and Resources, if you don't include the expenditure for the restroom that we will be getting reimbursed for through the grant that came out of that area, Mr. Geary is in the black, $6,000 compared to a deficit of 100. So these homeless encampment cleanups, we used to contract out for anywhere between 40 and 60,000 a year. Mr. Aguirre, his crew almost weed abated every single CCSD lot, which was always contracted out. So it's an understatement what he's accomplished in one fiscal year. And so kudos to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. It's very, I second that because we're aware, that we've been looking very closely at the budget in F&R, Facilities and Resources. And the biggest change is obviously we moved from a system where if our guys couldn't do it, they'd contract out. And now we have our guys can do it because of training and because of adequate staffing and because of Mr. Gurry's management. But we're doing so much more. For instance, homeless encampment cleanup. That used to be something we didn't touch. And now we're trained and we're able to do it ourselves with our own people. So that's a testament both to some wise strategic decisions in top management and also to very good management. So congratulations. Dr. Dean.
And thank you, Mr. Gary. In the year you've been here, you've made a big difference in the way things are handled. And I also want to thank our general manager for hiring Mr. Aguirre. It was an excellent choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
I didn't, without any, if there are no further questions, I'll ask for public comment if there's any. Does anybody here want to comment on the Facilities and Resources report? Anybody online?
Yes, Elizabeth Bettenhausen.
Ms. Bettenhausen.
Yes, I have two points to raise. The first is I didn't recognize in the so-called homeless section, what is Steelhead Park on the, that's odd to me, Steelhead Park. So what is it? And I want to make a comment in light of the several comments that have just been raised by the board. I think that a redefining of what constitutes homeless center space or homeless space here is very important for looking at the budget. We had tremendous encampments all during the years. And there is, as the report said today, very little except for one person camping out these days. So please let's be comprehensive in our accolades. I do not question the accolades at all. This manager has been very, very impressive, including sitting and waiting this whole meeting to give his report. So I thank him very much, but I do wonder what is Steelhead Park?
Perhaps you can answer that question. Thank you, Ms. Bettenhausen.
So when talking to the previous employees that were here, Martine and Alberto, so the section there off of Highway 1 towards the Santa Rosa Creek, right along the Highway 1 here on the other side of the light, apparently used to have benches and tables and stuff of that nature down in that area. And that's what they used to call it, was Steelhead Park. That was one thing that I ended up learning. That's why I ended up more or less naming it to the same thing that I was aware of. If it's named something else, I mean, I'm all gratitude for that. Well, yeah, let me know. But that's what I was known or told as it was.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't know that either. Dr. Thomas, you had a
Yeah,
question?
and to add to that, Ms. Bettenhausen, as you're walking down San Rosa Creek Trail from the highway towards wastewater treatment plant, off on the right, there's a signboard there that talks about steelheads, and it's hard to miss. There's a little pathway that footpath in there somewhere, and so that's that's the area.
No further questions or comment. Thank you.
Well,
Oh.
one more thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, in regards for other the deal there for more or less the numbers that have gone down. We made quite a bit of. I've been more or less involved quite a bit with the county and different things of communicating with a lot of the encampments and stuff of those areas. The ones that we do know of on our CCSD property, that's a main focus on our behalf of patrolling the ranches and stuff of that nature with the ATVs and also with the trucks. But it's just, just going around and just making it known that we're out there. It kind of does make a difference. We become more or less a nuisance at a point to them, and which is, it's a double standard on that one there. I know everybody has hardships and they're trying to do what they do, and I respect that. But as for our property, I know with our conservation easements, that's my biggest concern, as I don't want it to fall back onto the district and the community in that aspect.
No, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Our final manager's report is utilities. Mr. McElhenney, I guess you might have, here's our utilities manager, James Green.
Good afternoon. Thank you, President.
Good afternoon.
I'll bring to you the July utilities report. Begin with wastewater. It's our seasonal cleaning, which is about 3 years overdue for our polishing ponds or our finished ponds. That is our treated wastewater effluent that gets pumped out to the percolation ponds out on the percolation field there in San Simeon. Just a little over 1 million gallons between those 3 ponds, and they were completely drained and cleaned. Upgrades to valving and those sort of things took place during that time too. And so that was a major effort for the wastewater crew here to kind of get back and get the plant back to original operating spec here after our wet season deluge that we had. So here we're still trying to catch up in the summer, and we've got those all cleaned out and back in service. So a lot of work, but hats off to the wastewater guys for that as well. While we did that, we also did some pump maintenance on our wet well number 2, which is our effluent pump, which pumps about 694 gallons a minute. So that's 1 million gallons a day that thing pumps if we're pumping 24 hours a day. So it's a big pump. It's very necessary for us there. Moving over to the water side here, we show some illustrations of the new 170 feet of domestic water line that we have installed on Pine Knolls, thanks to Souza Construction. While they were out there doing the repairs on this, they unearthed 3 manholes that have been buried on that road for decades. We took the opportunity to strike while the iron is hot. We got a great deal through Souza Construction to raise those manholes up. Those 3 manholes were raised for about $4,200, which is usually a fee that we paid in the past for one. So that was a great opportunity for us. Wastewater has gotten in and cleaned those manholes, jetted, and done some cammering. So everything is in good operation up there. Fortunately, when you seal up those manholes, nothing gets in to clog them or causes any other inadvertent damage or impact to those. So they're all sealed up. And we did use Pamerex lids on that as well, just due to the runoff there. So that way we don't have any I&I in the future from that area during storm events. As you know, there's quite a bit of runoff in that area while we have storm flow. Also in water, we did some major stuff over at rodeo grounds. We had a leak there on a small transmission main, which turned out into replacing about 38 feet of steel line. with new steel line. Due to the pressure, we couldn't replace it in-house with C900, which is a very high density PVC pipe. The pressure exceeds 250, and that is the max rating curve for C900. So we went in and had ductile iron put back installed. We were able to, what I'm going to say, schematic our underground there. We have no good plans until now of the underground there and what was going on with the appurtenances and shutoff valves and what led to where. So we were able to uncover, excavate, and get those detailed drawings and upload to our Diamond Maps, which is our GIS component to our water system. So that way we can pull up a street or an icon and see exactly what that material is, how long it runs, what the pressure rating, and a lot of other specs on there. So that was a great opportunity for us to update that as well. Also on the waterfront, we touched on the AMI, where we put in 50 of those new units by hand. We're having some integration issues right now with our portal. So that portal is how we view all the customer portals, and this is how we'll derive our data for future reporting and separating commercial versus residential. So right now we're having some issues with that integrating quite properly. So and we've had some competing priorities with leaks and so forth out in the system that until we get some of those integration problems figured out, we would just kind of pause the manual installation of AMI right there. And if I could, if you like, I could provide an update on some of the projects that we have going on. And if you'd like me to continue that, then maybe we can finish up with some questions if you guys prefer. Our San Simeon Wellfield transmission and effluent line, our consultants been working diligently with Caltrans right now. We were able to get a seat at the table with Caltrans. We had about an hour meeting with them. They actually advocate for us going through their encroachment or right of way. So right now we're working with an encroachment engineer from Caltrans and our consultant, and we're doing some geotech. So we're trying to locate where the other underground utilities are as well, and do some geo to reinforce our strategy for installation. And that's going to be horizontal drilling there. The skate park. The civil design is submitting to the county for a construction permit. And we've worked with legal recently for design services. Legal's been extremely helpful and very patient in helping us coordinate this effort. So I want to thank our legal counsel for all of his help with that. The fiscal and restroom. We are working on an RFP for that for site preparation right now, which is we are going to schedule for late fall, just prior to the wet season beginning. And so look for the request for a proposal for that to drop in about 2 weeks as we formulate that. Our zero liquid discharge temporary pilot project. We met with State Water Resource Control Board, Division of Drinking Water, and Regional Water Boards, our wastewater authority, on Tuesday afternoon. We went over with Trevi Water Systems and Global Water Innovations, and we talked about a bunch of things. They loved the idea. We got into how few chemicals it uses and how we're kind of using an ion extraction, and really did a deep dive onto the methodology that's going to be taking place for that project. And right now, we're just kind of looking at the current specifics for sample analysis there for our permeate from that brine. We do currently have a low threat discharge waiver that we applied for and received in 2020 that we can utilize for that. But right now, we're just kind of throwing back and forth water quality and what they deem is appropriate for us there. Our Stewart Street tanks, got some great news. I've got just about a 300-page document right here. So there's our initial study of a mitigated negative declaration. So we'll be submitting that to county, to state clearinghouse, to another government location to authenticate that. And so we're right on track. In fact, we're just a little bit ahead of schedule, even with all the reorientation and geo work we had to get done, and the rethinking of our line and site and property there. So yeah, we're just a little bit ahead of the schedule right there. So that's good news. We actually look to have the opportunity to break ground here this calendar year. We'll be in the wet season, so we'll see kind of what the weather looks like as we get closer, but we're nearing our start date for that. Also pleased to present another report that we've completed is our lead and copper rule reporting. So that's where we had to physically get out and investigate after our meter what the customer's material is, all the way up going into the customer's house. So we've completed our inventory analysis with that, submitted that to our consultant, and they put together a report for us, which we've reviewed, and we will be submitting to the Division of Drinking Water. This was actually due October 16th, and so we're couple months ahead of schedule, so that feels good. So I look forward to bringing you the results in that report to our R&I meeting coming up in, I think, September. So if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to field them.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Any questions from the directors? Dr. Farmer.
Thank you. Mr. Green, good afternoon. So I just wanted to touch base on 2 or 3 items here. So I noticed on page 104, where you state here under blockages, the deracking unit has been experiencing multiple issues. Fibers of an unknown material have been clogging the screen. So I'm just curious, how long has this been going on? And do you feel if this continues that maybe some kind of notice could be put in the water bill in English and Spanish to alert people to the fact that this problem is existing? Or do you feel this is kind of a one-time thing and there's no need to worry any further?
I mean, it happens occasionally. It's been more consistent the last couple of months. So I do think that's a great idea to, put items not to put down the toilet, on our water billing that goes out or on our utility billing. So yeah, I'd agree. We can, we'll definitely consider that. We can put some things together, and I'll work with our superintendent to get a list of items to please not place in the porcelain.
Also, with regard to the wastewater plant, I heard this news item the last couple of days, actually, that there's been a serious increase in traces of COVID in 27 states, in the wastewater. So, and I know this has happened here, obviously, when COVID was like nationwide or worldwide for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
So are we kind of staying on top of that? And I'm assuming if there was a cause for alarm, you would have told us. I just want to make sure that, considering it's becoming an issue, how are we doing on that?
So Verily is testing our wastewater. This is a program that the prior utility director started, and we've continued on with. Looking at the reports here recently, we have seen as long as, or as short as a couple of weeks ago, 10 to 15% increase in that findings in our wastewater from our studies. So I don't know if there's much that we can do about it. It's all part of the treatment process here at the plant. So again, the testing's free for the CSD. So it's good to know, but there's not a whole bunch we can do, I mean, community-wise, except for bring this to attention and, make everyone aware of that.
Yeah, well, I think we all know, including at least one board member here, of people that we know, or people like even ourselves, who have contacted COVID, and I hear folks talking about it. So I just wanted to follow up on that. So, and one other thing on page 113 under the water loss report, where it says, the water loss calculations in the following section contain a significant amount of error due to bi-monthly billing cycle and the length of time it takes to finish meter reading. So, that's, I guess it's a little confusing, but if we read it long enough, it's a little bit clearer. But down below it says, the report attached here is for 2024 year to date. So I kind of had to look to where that was, and that was on page 126. So just a suggestion, maybe it says, attached here, we could have added, see page 126, something like that.
I see. Yeah, I agree. We can list that a little bit more or less confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Director Farmer. Yeah, I had a quick question actually on that same page, on page 113 up above, just on timing on the AMI installation. You've received, this says you received 1,700 registers, and I assume you're going to receive the remainder fairly soon. What's the timetable for getting all the meters equipped with this at this phase?
At our pace that we're looking to the calendar year 2025 by the end of the first quarter.
First quarter 2025. Thank you.
My internal timeline's a little bit more expedited than that, but that's a real number. Obviously, we're looking to get that done faster. We're still seeking bids or proposals from contractors who we can bid and who we can hire to assist us with this. But in-house at that rate, which we're at right now, we're looking at a first quarter 2025 completion date.
Okay. And I'm just sort of connecting dots here on this page. Will the installation of these registers help solve the problem referenced below of the length of time it takes staff to finish meter readings?
Yes,
I would think so. Now, if you briefly explain why you have an error rate because of that. I mean, because I was trying to figure that out too. Why there's such a large gap between the production numbers and the billing numbers? Is it because of just the timing of the reports and the meter readings aren't on, are not, at all at the same time, or how does that work exactly?
Yeah, so the end of the billing and production dates aren't simultaneous. It's taken us an additional week or 10 days into the following month to read. So we're just not lining up those production numbers versus build numbers right now.
Yeah.
And again, we're reading close to 2,800 meters manually.
Oh.
So there are some physical errors by operators when entering those digits. It's a small number. It's probably like 10%, but that's, again, an additional day to reread those to have correct numbers. We can't process this batch until we have every single 4,032 service entries populated into that, and then we can finally create that batch. So it's just become a tedious process and very hands-on, which I've been well reported. So I apologize, and we're working as fast as we can so we can get this back on track. We did have leak detection earlier this summer and found that 0 water loss was occurring in our system right now in our 67 linear miles. So that's why we're narrowing this down to basically it's just has to be our billing and our reading and not lining up effectively.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any other questions? If not, I will open this to public comment. Anybody present want to comment on this item, the utilities report? Anybody online, Ms. Dodson?
Yes, Elizabeth Benhausen.
Ms. Bettenhausen, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I wonder, there isn't an equivalent of Miss for Mr. In the same situation. It's very odd in the English language. But that quite aside, I have 2 questions. The first is, was there in this meeting with the Regional Water Control Board any agreement on when they will issue a permit? I know that they have to do it now, and you didn't mention that there was anything decided about that. So I'm still curious whether there is a date set for that. And number 2, I have increasing questions about the paragraph at the bottom of page 113, rather than fewer questions, given all the strange questions that have been posed already. I don't understand if you're saying that before 2023, when the sheet of paper says 15.5% water loss, say 2021, if that's also an error, or 2019, is that also an error? What exactly is the mistake territory that has been made here in this reported in this paragraph? I don't get it.
Okay.
I get it less and less.
Thank you. Ms. Benton, is that, are you finished? I want to make sure you're done.
Oh, no, I'm not finished, but since you interrupted me
Well,
already, I declare myself finished.
Oh, no.
Can I answer the questions and then we'll
Mr. Green was trying
return
to answer
you,
you there. I just wanted to make
Doctor?
sure you were done. Go ahead, Mr. Green.
Yeah, let me take a couple of questions, then we'll return to her and we can answer some more. First of all, again, we do have a permit. We've had a permit since 2020. It's a low threat discharge waiver. It's R320190089 is our permit, which we are permitted to discharge low threat liquids into our percolation ponds. What we're attacking here with this, or trying to reach an accord with the Division of Drinking Water, what kind of sampling, what do they want to see, what are the constituents we're measuring, what is the duration, those few things. But again, we do not need a permit. We have a permit, and we're just kind of, executing some finalities and specifics. Back to the billing and the water loss again. So again, we started manual reading here. They really started to fall off in the last year and a half. You referenced 2019. 2019, we still had 95% of our meters reading autonomously through radio reads. So that's why those days were a little bit more accurate, because it took us 2 or 3 days to read the meters. So it was done in a more accurate period of time where we could close that end book, monthly book end with production and use or consumption. So as that has stretched out and it's taken us longer, we've seen that unaccounted for water loss grow, pretty much directly corresponding to that. Is that getting a little clearer?
Yeah. Excuse me. And Ms. Bettenhausen, you have a little more time, so I can return the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me just ask the question. The report attached here is for the 2024 year to date. Is that accurate or not? For those 3 bi-monthly reports?
I mean, it's as accurate as we can get with what we have right now for billing and meter reading.
And so what's on the reverse page for the 3-month period, the 6-month section is accurate insofar as it's possible for human beings, blah, 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 right?
That's correct.
So we're really up high on our water loss.
It would seem.
I will let that sit, because I assume that by the first quarter of 2025, we'll have data from the new. I wait patiently, and I've waited now for 20 years, and my patience is not diminishing. It's just sitting there like a beautiful, beautiful flower on the rock. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate your patience. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any more comment?
No.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah. Vice President Scott, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. So how do we know how much to bill someone if we haven't read their meter?
Well, we're reading the meters. We read the meters, every other month.
Right.
Every meter is read, and the problem is we're not reading it on day 1 and then day 60, and then every 60 days after that those intervals ebb and flow. Sometimes we're getting those first meters, the meters that read radio wise still, those are getting done all on the first day. So those are the ones that are accurate. What we're having problems with is the remainder that are flowing into a week or 10 days after the billing cycle closes. So we're still reading meters. We're reading them on a schedule. They're just not flowing into a nice little bucket coinciding with our production. Does that make sense? So every reader's getting read. They're getting read on a consistent basis, 60 or 65 days apart.
But it's the days after the first where that doesn't line up with our production numbers that skews that.
Vice President Scott, if I may.
Yes.
And I know Mr. Green's articulated it, but we have so many failed and inoperable meters that aren't reading correctly that it takes staff at least a couple weeks to go out and manually read these, which extends past the end of the billing period, which basically our numbers are faulty when we're inputting what we've produced versus what we've billed, because we're sending out bills that aren't accounting for the water that was read, 6 days, 7 days, 8 days after the bill period closed. So our inputs and outputs just aren't aligning because of our failed meters. So when our new meters go in the first quarter of 2025, everything's going to be almost instantaneous, and you'll have live data that you can pull off the website up to the minute almost. And so I think that's going to fix where our math is off, so to speak.
So, but I don't get, how do you bill someone if you haven't read their meter?
Vice President Scott, we have read their meter. So let's just say we're read their meter on the 1st of June. We come back on the 1st of August and we meet. So we're reading every meter and we're getting every reading. And some of them we have to read twice again because of, inaccuracies by manual reading. But every meter is being read and being read accurately.
So is there a lag time for when the bill drops then?
Well, billing as a whole is being released later because of this.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Notice that. I had one, Director Thomas first.
Yeah, thank you, President Gray. And based on the nature of the questions, I just want to take a stab at this. And we get the bill and it says June 1st through July 31st. That's what the bill says. But if the meters failed, they might have had to come out on May 20th to take that first reading. And maybe they came out August 10th, right? It's almost like, in the Olympics, you've got a bunch of runners, and unfortunately, the people assessing the performance have to measure the time of, it'll take them 20 minutes. So after about 3 minutes, they'll figure out where this guy is. And a minute later, they'll figure out where that guy is. And a couple of minutes later, they'll figure out where that guy is. And they'll try to call who won based on that, because they're at different times. So it may be 45 days one month. It may be 67, 70 days the next month. They're unable to measure the flow of water at a point in time because of the failed equipment.
Yeah.
And that's what they're diligently attempting to do with these meters. In the future, they'll be able to click. It will be at plus or minus a minute.
Yeah.
Right now, it's plus or minus 2 to 4 weeks. I think that's
okay. It is confusing. I don't want to prolong this Q&A too long, but my understanding is with the new electronic, the registers that give a automatic electronic reading for all the meters basically at the same time, you'll be able to detect the meters themselves, meters that are failing. Because every meter has a physical mechanism in it that over time wears out. They tend to get slower, which helps the consumer at the expense of the producer. But my understanding is that these will give us a way to identify the meters that most need to be replaced, the physical, body of the meter. Because we're going to be doing meter. I mean, I think about a 10% annual meter body replacement. So that the benefit of this partially is to identify the meters that aren't registering properly, because you can't do that now with this. When Mr. Director Thomas is about this kind of sporadic process, you can't really make comparisons adequately between meters that between what they should be registering and what they are. But now we'll be able to. That's how I understand it, at least. Am I correct in that?
That's exactly correct, President Gay. Once we get all these installed, then we can use that data to identify where we're going to start the replacement.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you very much. If there are no further questions, I think we can, we've had our comments. I think we can move on to the, actually last item is just future agenda items. And then we're going to be, after that, going into closed session. Future agenda items. Does anyone? Yes. Vice President Scott.
Yeah, and I don't know that this is the right place to ask this, but can we have a real short update on where we are with weed abatement?
Thank you, Vice President Scott. It will be short because I haven't had my follow-up meeting with Paradise Tree Service and the fire chief. I can just say anecdotally, they're out there knocking out anywhere between 60 and 70 parcels a week, if not more. I've had, and this is again kind of anecdotal, but I've had very little communication with the public in terms of being irritated for the lack of weed abatement. It's been really quiet. And so I believe we're doing a really good job. And I do know that they'll be on time for clearing all of the parcels. But I should have a better update for you by next week. And I can put that out in the GM letter.
Yes. Anybody want to suggest a future? There he is. The lights are, something that's hard to see, but I can see yours, Director Thomas.
Yeah, that is a tough angle. Ms. Harmon Worthen had asked for discussion perhaps at some point in the near future on home lighting, and in another context, I know she had asked for consideration of a lighting policy. So it would be worth putting on the agenda some discussion of lighting in Cambria, and however we frame that with an outcome possibly of initiating something of that nature.
Yeah, Vice President Scott, I think you had something you
Yes.
could address that. Yeah.
Yeah, we have put that on an agenda, and I think in October. In October, we are going to have that discussion, and we'll be hoping to have a direction from the board at that point for a lighting policy.
Well, it'll be at the board, and the board will direct policy committee, basically tell them what we want to see coming back from them, essentially.
And one of the things, pardon me,
Dr. Farmer.
Pardon me, President Gray, one of the things that Ms. Harmon Worthen brought up was the fact that the lights here at the Vets Hall in the back are really bright. So not having looked at those, I don't know, but maybe before we take a look at our lighting policy, we could take a look at maybe, in fact, we do need to dim the lights at the back of the Vets Hall. It's just thought I'd throw that out there. Thanks.
Or to have them downward facing, hooded.
As she said, facing the ground, not the sky.
Exactly. So at this point, was there any public comment on future agenda items? Online or in? No.
No.
Okay. So we are, next phase is adjourned to closed session. And I think Mr. Carmel will introduce it, then I'll ask for public comment, then we go into closed session.
I'd be glad to, President Gray. The board will now adjourn to closed session for a conference with its labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54.957.6. The agency's designated representative is General Manager Matthew McElhaney and Che Johnson, and the employee group is the International Association of Firefighters. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on this topic? Anybody online?
No.
Okay, thank you. So we now hereby adjourn to closed session. Yes, definitely. 10-minute break, and we'll reconvene in the fireside room.